or we can even adopt him as our son. So we can see the transition from him being sold off as a slave, and we understand the conditions of a slave is not so great. They have to follow everything that the master would tell them to do. But in this case, Yusuf alayhi salam is not made a slave, but rather he gets to live comfortably in this house with stability, right? And as we mentioned yesterday as well, he lives in a very affluent house. He lives in a minister's house. And in a minister's house, you would find other ministers coming, or you would find other people, high influence and power would come into this house, and they would sit and they would discuss all sorts of issues, right? They would discuss social issues, political issues, financial issues. So, when Yusuf alayhi salam is growing up in his house, he is acquiring all of this knowledge. He becomes privy to all of these conversations that are taking place. So slowly, slowly, he gets a much better understanding of, the world that he is around at the moment. Okay. And then Allah says that, and then it said that Allah blesses Yusuf alayhi salam with knowledge and with wisdom. And we said that those two go hand in hand. If you have knowledge, that's great. But then you need to also have the wisdom, right? You need to be wise enough to implement that knowledge sufficiently. And you need to be able to implement that knowledge correctly. So all of these things are happening now, and Yusuf alayhi salam has got to a period of in his life where there is actual stability in it, right? If we look through the story right now, there were lots of ups and downs for him. He had to go through the jealousy and the envy of his brothers, to being put into their plans, so he was cast aside from his family. And this is one of the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always looking after Yusuf alayhi salam, okay? And this is one of the main, and this is the story that highlights the question that the unbelievers had asked as to why the Bani Israel had moved to Egypt, okay? And this follows precisely the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. So inshallah, we're going to continue on, and we're going to continue on from ayah number 23. Now, if anyone wants to follow, you can follow, by reading the Quran, or you could just have the translation with you as well. But I prefer to just go through the surah, go through the ayahs, and hopefully, continue on with the story. I have to also say as well, the next few ayahs, it does cover a few mature topics. So inshallah, we're going to try and use the right words, and inshallah, we're going to try and explain it as best as possible. But the last verse that we touched up upon is that Yusuf alayhi salam had now reached an age of maturity. So now he was a mature person. We don't know the age, but we understand that in his lifetime now, Yusuf alayhi salam, he's now a mature person. So inshallah, we'll continue on from ayah number 23. So the ayah goes, and she tried to make him slip, the one in whose house he was from himself. And she locks the doors and she says, "Come here." He said, "I seek a place of refuge from Allah, my master. He has gone out of his way in taking care of my housing. There is no doubt that the wrongdoers will not be successful." So this is the next scene that we're looking at after when Yusuf alayhi salam has established himself and he's living a life of stability and comfort. Okay, the first thing we mentioned is that Yusuf alayhi salam, no, sorry, Aziz's wife, she tries to make him slip. Okay, and it is said that Yusuf alayhi salam was an extremely handsome man. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith, "When I met Yusuf alayhi salam, I saw that Allah subhanahu wa taala had blessed him with half of the beauty of the whole world, while the other half has been spread over the rest of it." Subhanallah. He was blessed with half of the beauty, right? If we look in today's day and age, and if we flip through magazines, and people are quoting, "Oh, this is the most handsome person," yeah, we look at the features, right? They have very very good natural features. They may have long flowing hair. They may have, different colored eyes, and their skin, complexion is great, and they have a very good physique as well. But think about the person who's probably the most handsome person right now, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says Allah blessed him with half of the beauty, right? So it's very important to understand that when Yusuf alayhi salam is growing up, he's growing up to be a very handsome and a very and a very very well articulate and a very extreme manner. He had very good mannerism as well in this case. So she tried to make him slip, and the one in whose house he was from himself. So we understand that in this particular situation, Allah wants to indicate that he was in a very special pressure situation. Okay, why is that a special pressure situation? Well, first and foremost, Aziz's wife has now been watching Yusuf alayhi salam develop over the years, and there is no doubt to say that she's become quite infatuated with him. Yeah, she's now Yusuf alayhi salam has become a desire that she wants to fulfill. And you have to think about the relationship and the complexity of the whole situation. So we know that the minister is the minister Aziz and his wife that live there. Now ministers usually they tend to be very busy, right? They're not in the house as often as they would like to be because they are attending to lots of other issues. So in this case, Yusuf alayhi salam has been left alone with Aziz's wife for much of the time, okay? And Yusuf alayhi salam has to deal with her all the time, right? Bearing in mind that he still lives in the house, so whatever Aziz's wife tells him to do, he has to do it. Oh, go clean this up, go pick this up, do this for me, do the shopping for me. So all of these things, Yusuf alayhi salam naturally has to say, okay, yes, I will do it. But now it's come to a situation where clearly she desires something more. And Yusuf alayhi salam understands this, right? So for him, it's a very precious situation because he's not used to saying no, right? Just how kids, hopefully, are not used to saying no to the parents, right? Whatever the parents would tell them, they would say, okay, yes, I have to understand and I have to follow through with this. But if your parents were to say something which is very wrong or which is, which you shouldn't do, then even you would be stuck. You'd be like, do I do this? Do I not do this? So it's a very conflicting situation that Yusuf alayhi salam is in. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah highlights that because he is under her roof, so she tried to make him slip from himself, right? So again, it's emphasizing the fact that it is her household, right? She's in control of the house, and she is requesting all of these things. And Yusuf alayhi salam is not being tempted, but he's being put in a very difficult situation. And in this ayah as well, it mentions that um, uh, Aziz's wife, she locks it. But she doesn't just lock the door, she double locks it. Yeah? What does it mean to double lock? It means you lock it once, then there's another lock, you lock it twice, right? And there's a chain that you chain it up as well, right? So we understand that in this situation, when Aziz's wife is trying to seduce Yusuf alayhi salam, she ensures that the door is locked, not once, but is double locked. So it's difficult for Yusuf alayhi salam to get out of this situation. Okay, and it's very natural that if we think about the attraction between a man and a woman, okay, usually what tends to happen is that it's the man who then tries to seduce the woman, right? It's the man that, who has to talk to her, who has to maybe flirt with her in order to get the woman's attention. And even then, women, they play quite hard to get, right? That's the natural situation, right? This is nothing out of the ordinary. This is one of man's natural desires, and this is sometimes how he would act in order to impress the other gender. But look in this case, it is in fact the woman who is trying to seduce the man. And naturally speaking, if a woman tries to seduce a man, man has very little control over himself, right? All of his defense systems go down very, very quickly. So again, is to show that look at the precarious situation that Yusuf alayhi salam was put into, right? Because if it was any other person, and if they were in that environment, and if they saw that look, the woman is being, she's trying to seduce me, then it would be very easy for people to give in to that. But Yusuf alayhi salam, he ensured that he stayed away. And one of the ways that he did this is by saying, I seek refuge in sort in Allah. Allah is my Lord, and He has been so kind to me. So instantly, when he thinks he is going to slip towards sin, he almost instantly thinks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he said, look, I seek refuge in Allah. And he looks back at all the times that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him from his brothers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him from the well when he was being put down in the well. And then Allah then took him to this great land. And He made me live this such comfortable and stable life. So after all that Allah has done for me, how could I possibly disobey Him? Right? So in this is a very important lesson for us that if we are leaning towards committing a sin, it's very important that the first thing that we do is that we try and turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instantly. Okay, because if we do that, then there is a less chance of us to go and commit that sin. Yeah, there's a less chance of us to go and fall into that sin as well. And what's really important is that even our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he forbade a man from being alone with a woman who is not a relative or who is not a mahram. Okay, because anytime a man and a woman are left alone, who is the third person in the room? Who is it? It's shaitan, right? And when shaitan is there, he's going to start whispering, and then ultimately he will make you do something which is very sinful. So these are very, very important lessons that we can take from this ayah. And it goes to show that, the natural attraction that is between man and woman is clearly prevalent. Okay, but if you know that this is not in a halal environment, then and if you know you're leaning towards sin, the first thing Yusuf alayhi salam did was he instantly turns back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, And then the next ayah says, she really did desire him. He would have desired her too, had he not seen the clear, indisputable evidence of his master. He would have failed. That is how we removed from him evil and shamelessness. He certainly was from our slaves that has been made sincere. Okay. So once again, this ayah just mentions the fact that these wrongful feelings, that were in this environment, Yusuf alayhi salam would have acted on that as well, had he not seen the clear, indisputable evidence of his master. And Allah mentions a few things in the Quran that men are greedy for and they really desire. So I'll ask this question out to you guys, as we are all men. I hope we have natural desires. So what do you think some of the desires that men really want to go for? Anything? Power, yeah, of course, yeah, power. What else? Friend. Oh, strength. Yep. Okay. Strength is another one. What else? Women. Yeah, that's unfortunately the biggest attraction that we all have, men, which is women, right? Some of the other things that we may be desired to could be gold and silver, horses and wealth, right? Horses, talking back to the time of the Prophet ﷺ, obviously those animals are of high importance, and they carried out lots of important work. But if we look at it, these are all the desires that we all had. But the most, the one desire that attracted, which couldn't be compared to anything else, was in this case women. Okay. And once again, is to reiterate the fact that it is normal. Okay, this is not out of the ordinary, which is haram and stuff. This is a normal attraction to have. All right, but obviously being in the right conditions and being in the right environment as well. So the next ayah goes on to say that they both ran towards the door, and she ripped his shirt from behind. And they stumbled upon her husband at the door. She said, what should you reward a person who wanted evil for your family? He should be thrown in prison or give him a painful torture. Okay? So now in this ayah, it is set the scene that once again, Aziz's wife is chasing Yusuf alayhi salam, right? And his doors are been, double locked. So physically, they both are running in the same direction. Yusuf alayhi salam and Aziz's wife, they both are running in the same direction. But emotionally and spiritually, they're running in complete opposite direction, right? Aziz's wife is running so that she can bypass him and she can ensure that Yusuf alayhi salam doesn't leave the house. And if he doesn't leave the house, then she can at least try and seduce him once more. On the other hand, Yusuf alayhi salam, he's running in the opposite direction, physically and emotionally and spiritually. He knows that if I stay in this house, something is going to happen. I need to leave this house straight away. And they both are running towards the door. And what happens? She rips his shirt from behind. And in that instant, when Yusuf alayhi salam is trying to open the door, who is in front? It is Aziz. And Aziz is there. Now think about that for a moment. Look at the situation there, right? The woman is clearly chasing the man, okay? And then her husband is right at the door. He opens the door and he sees this. What would if we were the woman in this case, right? What would our initial reaction be? You'd be like, oh man, I'm screwed. That's it, right? My husband's caught me right in the act, okay? I'm clearly chasing this man and my husband's seen it. But look how cunning she is, right? Right away, without even a moment, she says, what should you reward a person who wanted evil for your family? He should be thrown in prison or give him a painful torture, right? So even before, she can say, oh no, my husband's caught me in the act, I'm not innocent. And, to admit her fault, right away, she becomes quite cunning, and her cunning nature, and then she gives a speech just to say, look, I'm not the one who's evil here. It's Yusuf alayhi salam. He's the one who's the one who's trying to seduce me. And what's really important is also to see the sin in itself, right? The first sin that Aziz's wife wanted to do was wanted to, have her way with Yusuf alayhi salam. But then when that didn't happen, and when she saw her husband, what did she have to do then? She had to lie, right? So what does that show to us? Is that if you do one evil, it will lead you to do another evil, and so on, and so forth, until the whole thing just starts snowballing, right? And then you are buried under a whole you're buried under a whole lot of evil deeds that you've done just to accomplish this one thing. So the next verse says, Yusuf alayhi salam, he said, she is the one who tried to get me to slip off my character. A witness from among her family spoke and said, if this shirt is ripped from the front, then she is obviously the one telling the truth, and he is from the liars. So notice in the first part of the ayah, what's the first thing the wife does? The wife accuses Yusuf alayhi salam. She says, look, he wants to have his way with me. But you look at Yusuf alayhi salam, he immediately defends himself, right? He does not allow the accusation to go unchallenged. He doesn't stay quiet, even though that she's the leader of the house and she does she has the power to and the authority to do things around the house. The first thing Yusuf alayhi salam does is he immediately defends himself. Okay, and this shows us that it is permissible to defend your honor and your reputation. Okay, now the Aziz, he's stopped, right? He's seen the situation. He can clearly see what's happening. But his wife is saying one thing, and then Yusuf alayhi salam is saying something else. So how does he come to a solution? How does he find out who is telling the truth? How is he going to find out, what the situation is and who was being truthful and who was lying? And this is said in the next ayah. And then the witness says, if his shirt is ripped from behind, then she is lying. And he is the one telling the truth. Because it makes sense, right? If the wife is chasing Yusuf alayhi salam, right? If she's chasing him, she's trying to grab him, right? And from the back, you're obviously going to grab the back of his shirt. So if his shirt is ripped from the back, that means that the wife is clearly lying and Yusuf alayhi salam is telling us the truth. But if the shirt was ripped from the front, then that would mean that maybe Yusuf alayhi salam tried to have his way, and in defense, she must have just ripped the shirt to get away, right? And we know that from the last two ayahs that in fact the shirt was ripped from the back. Yeah, and it's very important. A shirt plays a significant role in Yusuf alayhi salam's life, right? If you think about it, the first time when he is, when he's abandoned in the well, what do the brothers do? They take Yusuf alayhi salam's shirt and they sprinkle some blood and they say, "Oh, look, our father, Yusuf alayhi salam, has been killed by a wolf." And the second time around, it is Aziz's wife who is running and trying to chase Yusuf alayhi salam, and she rips his shirt. So a shirt plays a very important role in Yusuf alayhi salam's life in this time. But having known from this ayah that indeed if the shirt is ripped from behind, then we know that Yusuf alayhi salam is indeed telling the truth, and it is Aziz's wife who is lying. And the next ayah says, when he saw his shirt ripped from the back, he said, all you women make great plans like this. So in this scenario, we have four people, okay? We have Aziz, we have Aziz's wife, we have Yusuf, and we have Yusuf alayhi salam, and we have the witness. And the husband knows that he is not supposed. So, after this, the husband also picks up a few clues here, okay? So he's coming home and he finds that his house is double locked. Yeah, usually if we know that we've just locked it once, if you're coming home, you'd get a bit suspicious if your wife or anyone in the house double locks it. That means they're trying to hide something from you, right? So this is one hint that they have. And the other thing is clearly is that the fact that the shirt is ripped from the back. So even Aziz comes to realize that indeed it is Aziz is his own wife that's been playing this, that's been lying behind Yusuf alayhi salam in this whole situation. And then he says, what a dastardly plot. What an evil plot you did. Indeed, your plot is very mighty. And then the next ayah, it says, Yusuf, alayhi salam, ignore this. And then to his wife, he says, ask forgiveness for your sin. You are from those who have made some serious mistakes. And that's and the reason why he asks Yusuf to ignore this is because if this goes out into the open, what happens? And everyone knows, right? Everyone knows that Aziz's wife tried to have her way with Yusuf alayhi salam, and Aziz's position would become it wouldn't be strong anymore because then people would know that, oh look, his own ego and prestige in society would be done because it'd be like, oh look, Aziz's wife, she tried to have an affair with Yusuf in that sense. So then, in this case, he tells Yusuf to ignore it, and in this situation, he asks his wife for forgiveness. And inshallah, I think we're going to finish the story here of Yusuf alayhi salam for the time being. So now he's gone through two big trials and tribulations, right? He's gone through the tribulations with his brothers, and ultimately he left that and he came to Egypt where he had a more stable life and he was able to be comfortable. But when he grew up, then he had the challenge of Aziz's wife. And it's very important, especially for all of us, regardless if we're young, regardless if we're old, that we understand the challenge that Yusuf alayhi salam had. Because every man will go through the same challenge, right? It's a natural attraction to be attracted to the opposite gender. But, um, it's important that we try and control our desire, especially in this case, right? Because this can lead to lots of sinful activities, and this could be a major sin in Islam. So, inshallah, like I said, I'm going to conclude the session here. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, all right. In that case, we'll conclude the session here. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you find these sessions beneficial, and I hope you're getting a more detailed look into Yusuf alayhi salam's life. Inshallah, we will continue these sessions from next week, and our session will be after Asr on Saturday and Sunday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.